if Palpatine executed Order 66 right after Mace Windu beat him and before Anakin arrived to save him? That's our story. Hope you guys enjoy this one. Our story begins on Coruscant, as Anakin Skywalker is flying his speeder through the never-ending waves of the traffic, and as the rain outside blasts the windows, Anakin looked over to the executive building to see flashes of green, red, and purple inside of the distant window. A crack of lightning split the sky, and when Anakin looked back to the window, it was now only purple and red remaining. The green, Kit Fisto, had blinked out. The Force itself seemed to be recoiling, as Jedi and Sith flared and flashed their blades against each other, and the Force was growing even darker. Palpatine was not holding back, but neither was Mace Windu. Windu was completely letting loose to win this duel. Anakin turned his speeder to the landing pad, knowing he could be too late at any given moment. And inside of the office, the fighting had become effortless for Windu. He'd given himself to the Force, to Vapad, and his body was moving as his mind guided him, step by step, swing by swing, until they reached the window. Together, Sidious and Windu slashed the glass away, allowing the heavy rain to slick the walkway. Sidious twisted around Windu, but the Jedi Master was able to turn the fight around once more and finish it. Windu twisted his blade enough to finally knock Sidious's blade away, and he kicked him down into the corner. And as Palpatine felt Windu's blade just inches from his face, he waited for Anakin Skywalker to run through that door and join him. But Anakin never came. Down below the office, as Anakin landed his speeder, another Jedi speeder had spun in front of him. Jedi Master Ahch-To leapt out of it, telling Anakin to stand down. She was informed of Anakin's departure from the temple, and she said that he could not be allowed to interfere. Master T told Anakin that he's been given direct orders to wait in the council chambers. Anakin couldn't believe this. He told Ahch-To to move now. Windu is going to kill the Chancellor. Ahch-To put her hands up, saying that Mace will only do as much as Palpatine forces him to do. He is the Sith Lord they've been looking for. Ahch-To wasn't sure exactly why Anakin was so worried about Palpatine, but she could feel that something had changed within him. He could not be allowed to interfere. Simple as that. But up in the office, as Palpatine felt the purple lightsaber inch closer to his face, he made a choice. He used a quick flick of the Force to turn on his communicator, opening up a prepared channel to the clone commanders around the galaxy. Before the fight, Palpatine had taken many precautions, including having Order 66 ready to go. And as Windu told Palpatine he was under arrest, Palpatine yelled out words that meant nothing to Windu. He yelled out, "Execute Order 66." And the message would spread all around the galaxy to the clone troopers. Windu heard these words, and he momentarily hesitated, asking what Palpatine just did. Palpatine raised his hands with a smile, telling Windu that the time of the Jedi has come to an end, and he fired his lightning up at the Jedi Master. Windu raised his blade to block it, and in the Force, he suddenly could feel overwhelming death. And down below in the Grand Halls, Anakin had ignited his lightsaber, pointing it at Ahch-To, telling her to move, and finally she had no choice, not wanting to push Anakin into the darkness, hoping Windu was given enough time to complete his mission. Anakin ran past Master T, but as he got closer to the office, he felt the shift in the Force. Anakin had to grab the wall to stabilize himself, as he felt thousands of voices suddenly cry out and go silent. Plo Koon was shot down in a starfighter. Aayla Secura killed on a recon mission in the Felucia jungle. Ki-Adi-Mundi killed in a battle on Megiddo, and the list just went on. And because of the timing of Order 66 was different this time, the order came in while Obi-Wan was without his lightsaber. He was riding the Varactyl back up to his troops after destroying Grievous, but when he arrived in front of Cody, all of the surrounding clones raised their blasters. Obi-Wan was completely caught off guard. He reached out to grab his saber from Cody's belt, but it was too late. The clones all fired together, and Obi-Wan tried leaping away, but it was too much. The blaster fire took Kenobi down, and Cody would confirm his death. On Coruscant, Anakin would feel like this happened to him. He could almost see Obi-Wan die, and suddenly, the connection between master and apprentice would go cold. Anakin felt alone in this galaxy. He didn't understand what was going on, but he finally would take off running back towards Palpatine's office. And when he arrived, Anakin was met with a truly shocking scene. Windu was by the broken window, and with one hand, the Jedi Master was blocking Palpatine's lightning with his purple blade, while the other hand was reaching out, redirecting blaster bolts from a squad of Coruscant Guard clone troopers that had just entered the office. And all of it began to click for Anakin. Top, Fives, the incident on Ringo Vinda with the inhibitor chips, all of it was a part of Palpatine's plan. And because Anakin had not cut down Windu at this point, he could still make the right choice. As a blaster bolt caught Windu in the shoulder, Palpatine had his opportunity, finally blasting him with lightning as his saber dropped just enough. But Anakin had made his choice. He reached out, and he grabbed the 5 clone troopers with the Force, throwing them out of the office, closing the blast doors behind them. Anakin then reignited his blade, flipped forward, and was able to slice right through the wrists of Palpatine. His hands fell to the floor, the lightning ceased, and Windu dropped to a knee, breathing heavily, body trying to recover from the lightning, and Anakin pointed his blade to Palpatine's face, demanding to know how to stop the clones. Palpatine tried to play the role of innocent Chancellor, telling Anakin he's right, the Jedi are taking over. He did what he had to do to defeat them, and outside of the office, Anakin watched as 6 gunships rose up with their blinding white lights shining on the Jedi. As the clones inside were demanding that the Jedi stand down, Anakin glanced at Windu. Palpatine said there was no way to stop this. The Jedi will all die, and in the most serious tone of his life, Windu gave Anakin 2 words: do it. Palpatine tried to scramble out of the window, but it was too late. Anakin slashed his saber through his neck, and the Sith Lord would die right here. A second later, torrents of cannon fire blasted out from the gunships. Anakin held up his saber to block the gunship fire, while Windu turned back to the office doors, where the clones finally burst through. The 2 Jedi were back to back, deflecting waves of heavy fire, until Anakin told Windu to trust him, flip out of the window, and land in the gunship furthest to the left. Windu just nodded, and at the same time, both of them flipped backwards, with blaster fire barely missing them. Anakin landed on the pilot window, stabbing his saber into the side of it, so the pilot was ejected far into the night sky. Windu landed in the gunship, throwing 5 clones out of it, and he closed the heavy doors, yelling at Anakin to get them out of here. Anakin grabbed hold of the controls, taking off towards the Jedi Temple, and as Anakin piloted the LAAT gunship through Coruscant, trying to avoid blaster fire from so many ships behind them, Windu took a moment to try and center himself. Darth Sidious was dead, but from the view of the clones, and likely security cams and senators, it will look as if the Jedi went in and just assassinated the Chancellor of the Republic. The Jedi Order was in grave danger, and the Force was terribly dark. He reached out for Yoda, Plo Koon, Kenobi, anyone, but was interrupted as a blast from one of the gunships rocked the ship that Windu was in. He yelled forward to Anakin, telling him to get this ship under control, and Anakin just yelled back that it's too late, and he told Windu to jump. Windu pushed the door away with the Force, looking down to see the Jedi Temple stairs below him. Countless clone troopers marched up the stairs. Together, he and Anakin would jump out of this crashing gunship, landing at the same time at the top of the stairs. The 2 of them turned inside, and they found many clones already had infiltrated the temple from the outside. Anakin took a moment to contact Padme, and he asked her to gather as many ships as possible and meet outside of the temple hangar. The Jedi simply don't have the ships available for massive evacuations, but perhaps some senators do. The attack on the temple would start faster than the 2 Jedi could have expected. Gunships landed on the upper platforms, while the many clones marched up the long front steps. Clone troopers moved in squads, charging through the gates and opening fire on any Jedi that they saw. The first defenders had been the temple guards and a few Jedi Knights near the entrance. They fought hard, blocking blaster bolts and holding the line, but there were simply too many clones. One by one, they were shot down. Temple guards that had grown up together, dedicated their lives to protecting the temple, were gunned down mercilessly as they held up their protective yellow blades. Jedi Knights were forced to retreat further into the temple. It was pure, unstopped chaos. In the halls, clones spread out. They entered the main halls, the archives, the sparring rooms, even the meditation areas. Nowhere was safe. In the Hall of the Knighthood, Sindralik led a group of Masters and Padawans into hiding, fighting back against any clones they came across, saving any Jedi they could. They fought together, but it was soon too much. After wave of clones, they were pushed back. Sindralik blocked blaster bolts, but he could only watch as a group of Jedi Knights by his side fell to the floor. Bodies collapsed together, and the hallway filled with smoke and sparks. In the archives, Jocasta Nu used the Force to slam clones into walls, then ran to hide with the holocrons. She knew they had to be kept safe, as generations of Jedi history were in this room, but the clones were already beginning to set the room on fire. In the youngling dorm area, Baltar Swan stood between the children and the troopers. She held her ground until she was overwhelmed, sealing the doors behind her as she fell. The younglings were safe for now, behind the heavy blast doors, but they were extremely afraid. Blaster fire echoed everywhere, statues fell, fires broke out, explosions shook the walls. Clone flame troopers moved through the lower levels, flushing Jedi from hiding. Snipers shot through the windows of the towers. A few Jedi tried to escape on a shuttle, but it was blown apart in the sky before it could leave the platform. It looked like the end, until finally, Windu and Skywalker ran in to help. They flew in through different points of the temple. Anakin jumped down from above, dropping into a group of troopers, cutting them down in seconds, feeling great remorse after fighting alongside these clones for years, but he had no choice. They were no longer themselves. Anakin twirled his blade around as he moved fast, clearing halls, blocking shots, and breaking through doors to find survivors, guiding them out towards the hangar, where groups of Jedi were beginning to gather. Windu entered from the side, lightsaber flashing as he knocked clones off their feet and cut right through them, doing whatever he must. He moved steadily, never stopping, headed towards the areas with the most fighting. Their arrival changed everything. Jedi who'd been hiding or falling back suddenly started to push forward. A few Padawans and Knights joined Anakin as he cleared the main bridge, and in the central garden, Windu would free a group of trapped Knights, telling the remaining Jedi to fall back to the hangar. And in the hangar, Jedi were holding the line as Senate ships from allies to the Jedi began to roll in, thanks to Padme's call for help. Mon Cala transports from the Senate rolled in, along with Naboo ships and Alderaan transports. One by one, Jedi were being helped onto these ships. One Jedi sliced open a landing gear panel with his saber, while another helped load on the injured. Clones kept firing, but Anakin rushed in and cleared the upper level of snipers. Windu arrived next, covering the lower hangar entrance. They stood together again, holding off a fresh squad of clones, while the ships lifted off. More Jedi joined the fight. Some guarded the exits, others carried the wounded. Escape ships began to launch. Not everyone would survive, but thanks to Windu and Anakin, there was now a chance. The temple was still burning, but the Jedi were not finished. Ships rose up, and they were quicker than the blockade of Venators trying to take them down. Some would be destroyed, but many of the ships made the jump to hyperspace, leaving the horrors of Coruscant behind. Soon, the typically calming hum of hyperspace filled the Naboo ship with a low, steady pulse, far softer than the thunder of battle they just left behind. And for the first time in hours, there was some stillness. Jedi were wounded, scared, weary, sitting against the walls of the main corridors, tending to their burns and their blaster wounds. Their eyes were hollow from what they just witnessed and survived. The flicker of medical droids and the quiet footsteps of Padawans moving through the cabins were the only signs of life beyond the ship's engines. No one spoke. Everyone didn't know what to say. And in one of the side chambers, away from the others, Anakin sat alone with Padme. The adrenaline had finally faded, leaving behind only exhaustion and something deeper, something that was hollow. The fight was over, but the grief found space to breathe. He'd not spoken since stepping onto the ship. The moment his hand brushed the cold metal walls of the cabin, he felt it again. The silence in the Force, where Obi-Wan was supposed to be. That familiar warmth, the constant, steady presence, was just gone. Anakin pressed his hands against his eyes, trying to push it away. But the weight stayed. He'd saved the temple. He'd saved so many lives today. He knew he made all the right choices when it came to Palpatine, to Windu, to everything, but he couldn't save his master. He'd never gotten to say goodbye. There was some comfort in remembering their last meeting before Obi-Wan took off to Utapau, but the guilt pressed against his chest as he thought he failed his master anyway. Padme sat beside him, her presence the only thing to be steady in the haze of all of this, but even her presence was beginning to bring Anakin pain, as he had seen her die in his dreams too many times. The thought of losing her after everything else that had just happened, it was clawing at Anakin, but she was still here. She was breathing, warm, stronger than he remembered, and in her calm silence, he felt something begin to soften. The fear didn't vanish, but it stepped back, just long enough for him to breathe again. And outside the chamber, the stars were streaming by in long, soft lines, as in another ship, Bail Organa's ship, Mace Windu was using an emergency Jedi code to try and find any survivors. The only answer he would receive was from Master Yoda, and Yoda would ultimately decide that the Jedi should travel to Ahch-To, and the coordinates were given to the ships to jump to. Coruscant was tense, broken, and smoke from the Jedi Temple still curled into the atmosphere as clone patrols marched openly through the Senate Plaza. When Bail Organa's cruiser returned, joined by the ships of Padme Amidala, Mon Mothma, and other senators that helped the Jedi escape, there was no welcome. There was suspicion. The senators returned, knowing they would be questioned, perhaps even arrested, but they also knew someone had to speak for the Jedi, for democracy, as the Jedi were still being hunted, and inside the Senate building, the chamber would fill fast. Mas Amedda had tried to assume control, flanked by Sly Moore and a handful of emergency security advisors, but his words were hollow. His voice, once backed by Palpatine's presence, now rang hollow as senators were questioning what was going on. When Padme stepped to the central podium, the room would go quiet. Her voice was steady, clear, and unwavering as she laid out what happened. The Jedi had been targeted by secret contingency order, executed without any Senate approval. Palpatine had wielded powers never granted to him, and now the galaxy was facing the edge of full authoritarian control. One by one, senators who had once stayed quiet began to slowly speak up. Some were hesitant, others were bold, but the tide was beginning to turn. Bail Organa would call for a formal vote, the dissolution of emergency powers, the reactivation of the Republic's constitutional process, and the creation of a temporary Senate-led commission to restore order and investigate the clones. Mon Mothma proposed that all Jedi survivors be left alone until all of this is figured out. Mas Amedda objected, claiming that instability will soon come to this republic, but the chamber was no longer his. The vote was soon cast, and the numbers were clear. These good senators, the delegation of 2000, had won. The victory wasn't totally complete. Loyalists to Palpatine were still in the shadows, and there were whispers of a breakaway faction forming across the Outer Rim. But for now, the Senate would stand tall. This delegation of 2000 had stepped into the void left by Palpatine and claimed it. They turned the tide not with weapons, but with courage, truth, and the Senate working together. And with the Jedi regrouping far away from the core, the Republic had a real chance to heal behind them. The Republic, led by the restored Senate Council under Bail Organa, Padme, and Mon Mothma, would act quickly. Emergency aid would be sent to war-torn systems. Senators traveled to planetary capitals in person to meet with leaders and restore peace. They were trying to restore hope back to the people that the Senate could actually work. The Republic would end the war officially once the Separatist leaders were arrested on Mustafar, and clone troopers would begin mandatory chip removal. As the Senate restructured, the clones were offered a choice to stay on as security or begin a new life. Many would take the offer to leave, tired, disillusioned with all of it, and others, like Rex, were granted full pardons and citizenship. The Grand Army was essentially disbanded. No more war, no more soldiers raised for it. It was a slow recovery for the galaxy, but it was real. And far across the galaxy, on the ocean-covered world of Ahch-To, the Jedi survivors, just over 1,000 of them in total, began building something. The island temples were homes, schools, sanctuaries. Windu would take the role of temporary Grand Master, as Yoda stepped away for now, and the Order was changing for the better. Anakin Skywalker would help design a training structure that was named after his own master, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Ahsoka would return to assist with training younglings. She would help with the Jedi hunt to make sure Maul was arrested and returned to Republic security, helping to sort of bridge the gap between Republic and Jedi once more. And Yoda, having chosen exile at first, would later rejoin them as a quiet guide, helping Jedi reconnect with the deeper currents of the Force. Padme Amidala would give birth to healthy twins in a quiet medical center on Ahch-To, as Anakin wanted her to be surrounded by Jedi healers and trusted friends. Doctors from Naboo were here with her. Anakin never left her side. Luke and Leia were born into a rebuilding galaxy, and as the twins grew, Jedi and Senators began to meet again. The bond between the Republic and the Jedi began to mend. The Jedi pledged to serve as guardians, not of the Senate, but of the people once more. Years would pass, and the galaxy remained fragile, but the darkness that had almost consumed it was gone. In its place was something far better. It would never be perfect, but it was continuing to grow. It was no longer ruled by fear. The Jedi were no longer lost in doctrine, and together, they began a new era built on a shared understanding. The war had ended, the rebuilding had begun, and the darkness was cast away. Folks, that is our story for today. One, as I say always, that I enjoyed, and because I did, these are always fun. This is an idea that I got a couple months back, but I just missed it and I wrote it down. Anyways, I liked it, so I wanted to pursue this path, and I hope it made sense. Wasn't exactly sure what to do with Palpatine, but I think it makes sense that, Order 66 is executed. It's like Anakin running into a wall and just being like, holy crap. Maybe, make the right choice once he sees what he's actually kind of walking into and stuff. So I don't know, I thought it made sense for them to kill Palpatine and then just really showcase what would be going on at the temple with the two of them helping out. So I enjoyed that. Hope you guys enjoyed this video overall. Let me know what you thought, and subscribe. Let's get to 96,000, 97, 98, 99, 100. Thanks. I'll see you in the next video.